Of all the things that make us human, our voice is perhaps the most intimate. It's the carrier wave for our thoughts, the instrument of our laughter. The first sound a mother often hears from her child, a unique signature of the soul. They stole that signature from me and used it as a weapon against the two people I love most in the world. For more stories that expose the dark underbelly of modern crime, make sure to subscribe to the Real Life Scam Cases channel. This is the story of how my own voice, synthesized by artificial intelligence, was used to convince my parents I had been kidnapped, extorting a small fortune from them in the most terrifying 30 minutes of their lives. It began, as most horrors do, on a perfectly ordinary Tuesday. I was in my apartment in Chicago, 300 miles away from my parents' quiet suburban home in Ohio. I was a senior graphic designer at a mid-sized tech firm, a life built on pixels and deadlines. My days were a predictable rhythm of coffee, conference calls, and the satisfying click-clack of a mechanical keyboard. My parents, Sarah and David, were retired. Their days were a gentler rhythm of gardening, crossword puzzles, and evening walks, with their golden retriever, Buster. We were close, but our closeness was maintained through the modern trinity of communication: texts, occasional FaceTime, and the Sunday evening phone call, a non-negotiable ritual. That Tuesday, I was neck-deep. In a project rebranding, my focus narrowed to the precise shade of cerulean blue for a new logo. My phone buzzed on my desk. I glanced at Eton unknown number with an Ohio area code. I dismissed it. Probably a spam call about my car's extended warranty, a vehicle I didn't even own. I returned to the blue. A few minutes later, it buzzed again, same number. I silenced it with a flick of my thumb, a small spike of irritation pricking my concentration. 300 miles away, my mother Sarah was not feeling irritated. She was feeling a cold, creeping dread that had started in the pit of her stomach and was now snaking its way up her spine. The first time the phone rang, she had answered with her usual cheerful, "Hello," silence. Then a choked sob. And then a voice that was utterly, terrifyingly familiar. "Mom, it was me." It was my voice. But it was a version of me she had never heard before. It was me, stripped of all confidence, all warmth, all safety. It was my voice, but it was hollowed out and filled with pure, undiluted terror. Alex, honey, what is it? What's wrong?" my mother asked, her own voice instantly tight with concern. My father, David, looked up from his newspaper in the adjacent living room, his brow furrowed. "Mom, they have me," my voice stammered. There was the sound of a scuffle, a muffled cry. The sound was so vivid, so real, that my mother could almost feel the vibrations of the struggle through the phone. Then a new voice, deeper, rougher, laced with a cold, metallic calm that was far more frightening than any shout. "Sarah," the voice said. It knew her name. "Your son is with us. He's been in an accident. He hit our car. There are complications. He's hurt." My father was on his feet now, standing beside my mother, his ear pressed close to the phone. He heard the man's words, and he heard the faint, whimpering sounds in the background. It was my whimper. He'd know it anywhere. He'd heard it when I was 5 and fell off my bike, when I was 10 and struck out in a Little League game, when I was 16 and had my first real heartbreak. It was the sound of his son in pain. "What do you want?" my father demanded, his voice a low growl of protective fury. "Listen very carefully," the man said. "Do not hang up this phone. Do not call the police. If we see any sign of police, you will never see Alex again. Do you understand me?" My mother let out a small, strangled gasp. My father's hand found hers, squeezing it tight. "We understand," he said, his voice grim. "Alex is bleeding," the man continued, his tone conversational, as if discussing the weather. "He needs medical attention. We have a friend who is a doctor, but he doesn't work for free. You are going to pay for his medical bills and for the damage to our vehicle. We need $15,000. $15,000. It was a staggering amount, but in that moment, it was just a number. It wasn't an obstacle. It was the price tag for their son's life. The only thought in their minds was, how do we get it? "You will go to your bank now," the man instructed. "Stay on the line with me. Do not talk to anyone else. If you hang up, the deal is off. If you try to signal a teller, the deal is off. I have someone watching the bank. We see everything." architecture of the scam was brutally effective. It created a bubble of pure fear, cutting them off from the outside world. The constant voice on the phone was their only reality. The threat of being watched, a classic but potent lie. Them, and the most powerful element of all, was the sound of my voice periodically crying out in the background, "Dad, please, just do what he says." My voice would plead between the man's instructions. "My arm, I think it's broken." How could they doubt it? It was my cadence. It was the specific way my voice cracks when I'm trying not to cry. Was the slight lisp I've had since childhood. A tiny imperfection that made the whole performance perfectly, horribly authentic. They were not listening to a recording. They were listening to their son's soul being twisted in agony. Back in Chicago, I was finally taking my lunch break. I stretched, my back popping, and picked up my phone to scroll through the news. I saw the 2 missed calls from the Ohio number and a single cryptic text from my dad that had come in about 20 minutes earlier. It just said, "We are handling it. Stay strong." I stared at the message, confused. Handling what? Stay strong about what? I figured it was related to some minor family drama. Maybe my aunt was being difficult again. I texted back. I decided to call them. It went straight to voicemail. That was odd. My mom always answered her phone. I tried my dad's cell, straight to voicemail again. A flicker of unease, nothing more. They were probably out with Buster. I shrugged and went to grab a sandwich. Meanwhile, my parents were living through a nightmare. They drove to the bank, in a state of silent, shared panic. The man on the phone was a constant, menacing presence in their car via the speakerphone. He kept them on edge, asking questions, demanding they describe the street, the cars around them, reinforcing the fiction that they were under surveillance. At the bank, my mother, her face pale and her hands trembling, approached the teller. The man had coached her. "Tell them you're making a withdrawal for a home renovation project, a contractor who only takes cash. Be convincing." The lie felt like ash in her mouth. She was a terrible liar, and the pressure was immense. The teller, a young woman named Chloe, looked at her with polite concern. $15,000. Chloe asked, her eyebrows raising slightly. "That's a large withdrawal. Are you sure you wouldn't prefer a cashier's check?" "No," my mother said, her voice barely a whisper. "Cash. It has to be cash." My father stood a few feet behind, the phone pressed to his ear, his face a mask of stone. He could hear the man on the other end. "She's doing good. Keep it up." The withdrawal was approved. The stacks of $100 bills felt obscene, heavy with a dread that had nothing to do with their monetary value. The next set of instructions came immediately. It wasn't a cash drop-off. It was far more modern and far more untraceable. "You will go to a cryptocurrency ATM," the man said. "I will walk you through how to deposit the cash and send it to our Bitcoin wallet." This was the point where, in a calmer state, the red flags would have become a screaming siren. My parents knew next to nothing about Bitcoin. But they weren't in a calm state. They were operating on pure adrenaline and terror. The scammer's genius was in making the unfamiliar seem like just another terrifying but necessary step in a process they couldn't escape. He was patient, his voice a steady guide through the complex interface of the machine. Located in a dingy corner of a gas station. Convenience store, my father, his hands shaking so much he could barely feed the bills. Into the machine followed the instructions. He scanned the QR code the man sent to his phone. He confirmed the transaction, and then, in an instant, the money was gone. Sucked out of their world and into the anonymous, irreversible ether of the blockchain. "Good," the man on the phone said. A pause. "We have the payment. We will drop your son off in a safe location in the next hour. Do not call him. We will call you to tell you where he is. And remember, if you call the police, he is dead." The line clicked. Silence. For the first time in nearly an hour, the bubble of fear popped, leaving them in a vacuum of sickening quiet. They stood by the cryptocurrency ATM, the smell of gasoline and stale coffee hanging in the air. They had done it. They had saved me. Now, all they could do was wait. The relief they expected to feel was absent, replaced by a profound, hollow exhaustion and the lingering echo of my pained cries. It was during that agonizing wait, about 20 minutes, after the call had ended, that my face popped up on my mother's phone screen. It was a FaceTime call. My smiling, oblivious face, confused, thinking maybe I was already free and calling them. My mother answered, her heart hammering against her ribs. My face filled the screen. I was in my apartment, my design studio visible behind me. A half-eaten sandwich on the desk. Was grinning. "Hey," I said cheerfully. "What was that weird text about, and why weren't you guys answering? Everything okay?" The world tilted on its axis. My mother stared at my face, my healthy, unbruised, smiling face. She looked at my father, whose own expression was a storm of confusion and dawning horror. "Alex," she whispered, her voice cracking, "but we just paid them." "Paid who?" I asked, my smile faltering. "Mom, what are you talking about? You look like you've seen a ghost." And in that moment, the full, crushing weight of the deception fell upon them. There was no car accident. There was no kidnapping. There was no broken arm. There was only a voice on the phone. My voice. The scream my mother let out was not loud. It was a low, guttural sound of pure anguish, the sound of a heart breaking not from loss, but from the violation of the deepest, most primal instinct a parent has. My father simply sagged against the car, the phone slipping from his grasp and clattering onto the pavement. I could only watch, helpless and 1,000 miles away, as their world collapsed in real time on my screen. The story tumbled out in a fractured, hysterical torrent of words: kidnapped, ransom, Bitcoin, your voice. The word that stuck in my mind was voice. But how? I kept asking, a cold dread seeping into my own bones. How could they sound like me? The answer, we would later learn from a weary but sympathetic police detective and our own frantic research, was artificial intelligence. Specifically, voice cloning technology. The barrier to entry for this kind of digital voodoo has fallen dramatically. Scammers no longer need hours of audio. Modern AI can create a convincing clone from just a few seconds of a person's voice. Where did they get the sample? I started to spiral, my mind racing through my digital footprint. The podcast I was a guest on a year ago talking about design. Trends, the company's Meet the Team video on our website, where I introduce myself, the dozens of Instagram stories and TikToks I'd posted over the years, speaking directly to the camera. My voicemail greeting? Any one of these, or a combination of them, could have been scraped from the internet, fed into a machine learning algorithm, and weaponized. The scammers didn't just replicate my voice, they directed it. The AI platform likely allowed them to. Type out a script, Mom. They have me. Dad, please, do what he says, and have the AI render it in my vocal likeness, complete with emotional inflections. They had created a digital puppet of me, and they had made a dance for my parents. The aftermath was a wasteland of grief, shame, and fury. The $15,000 was gone, vanished without a trace into an anonymous wallet. The police were kind but realistic. The chances of recovering money sent via cryptocurrency in an international scam were practically zero. But the financial loss, as painful as it was, paled in comparison to the emotional devastation. My parents were consumed by a toxic cocktail of emotions. They felt profound guilt and shame. How could we have been so stupid? My father asked me over and over, his voice heavy with self-recrimination. We're educated people. We read about these things. But when we heard your voice. He didn't need to finish. When they heard my voice, logic evaporated. Critical thinking was incinerated by primal fear. The scammers didn't hack a bank account, they hacked the human heart. They exploited the sacred, hardwired connection between a parent and child. My own feelings were a tangled mess. I felt an overwhelming sense of helplessness and a bizarre, irrational sense of culpability. It was my voice. I had, in my innocent quest to have a digital presence to share my life and my work, provided the very ammunition used to attack my family. It felt like a part of my identity had been stolen, twisted, and used for evil. For weeks I found it difficult to even speak on the phone with my parents. The sound of my own voice felt tainted, a reminder of the deception. The easy intimacy of our calls was replaced by a hesitant, wounded caution. This experience fundamentally changed us. We are now zealots for digital security and awareness. The first thing we did was establish a family safe word. It's a slightly silly, obscure word from a shared family memory. Now, if any of us are ever in trouble and need help, the first thing we must do is say that word. No word, no help. It sounds like something out of a spy movie, But in the age of AI, it's become a grim necessity. We also learned the critical importance of secondary verification. If you get a panicked call from a loved one demanding money, hang up, take a breath, and call them back on their known, trusted phone number. Or text them, or call their spouse or best friend. Break the bubble of fear the scammer is trying to create. Take back control. The incident has cast a long shadow over our relationship with technology. My mother now eyes her smartphone with suspicion. My father, once an avid user of social media, has deleted his accounts. And I, a man who makes his living in the digital world, have become far more circumspect about the pieces of myself I leave scattered across the internet. My voice, once something I shared freely, is now something I guard. The technology for voice cloning is only getting better, faster, and more accessible. It's a Pandora's box that has been flung wide open. It can be used for good to give voice to those who have lost theirs, for innovative entertainment, for personalized digital assistance. But in the wrong hands, it is a tool of terrifying psychological power. We were lucky, in a way. My kidnapping lasted less than an hour. The trauma is real, but I am safe. The money is gone, but we are a family that can weather the financial storm. But I think about the others. The elderly person on a fixed income who empties their life savings. The parent who doesn't have a tech-savvy child to explain what happened. The victims who are too ashamed to even report the crime. Our voices are supposed to be a source of connection and truth. They are the sound of home, of love, of reassurance. But we now live in a world where you can no longer trust what you hear. The deepest, most human parts of us are being digitized, dissected, and reassembled into fictions designed to prey on our deepest fears. The phantom me that cried on the phone to my parents that Tuesday afternoon was a ghost in the machine, a digital poltergeist born of code. And it's a ghost that will haunt my family forever. This is a new front in the war for truth, and it's being fought in our homes, through our phones, with the weapons of our own identities. Be careful, be vigilant, and please, create a safe word with your loved ones today. It's the simplest shield you have against the day. Your own voice is used to betray you. We hope our story serves as a stark warning to others who might face this terrifying new reality. So please, subscribe to the Real Life Scam Cases channel, and to help spread awareness, write in the comments where you watched or read this story from. Let's make the digital world a little bit safer together.